Welcome to No More Mondays, the podcast that helps you navigate career challenges through the wisdom of professionals who have been at the same crossroads. I'm your host, Angie Callen, and I welcome you to join me each week as I chat with leaders, entrepreneurs, and employees who are here to share their practical, tactical advice and some inspiration on how they arrived at career and life satisfaction. From job searching and career changes to going out on your own, we are breaking down barriers and providing actionable takeaways to help you take charge of your Mondays and ditch those Sunday blues. Welcome to No More Mondays. Hello, everybody, and welcome to No More Mondays. By now, I hope you know me. I am your host, Angie Callen. And if you've hung around this podcast with me long enough, you know we talk a lot about the importance of relationships, networking, and authenticity in your career and your business. Well, get ready because we're going to talk about it even more today as we literally have the guy who wrote the book on business relationships. Ed Wallace is an international speaker, leadership trainer, and the author of The Relationship Engine, where he uses his experience in corporate relationship management and business development to help us connect with the people who power our businesses and our careers. If you're a leader or a business owner or even just an employee who wants to improve the quality of your relationships with your clients, your teams, your business partners, whatever they may be, don't go anywhere. Relationships are the spice of life, and everyone is going to learn something from this conversation. I know it. Let's get into it. Ed, welcome to No More Mondays.
Thanks, Angie. Great to be here on No More Mondays with you.
First off, let's give everybody a little bit more context. I'm exceptionally excited for this conversation because relationships are so foundational to our professional development. And I think it would help to kick us off and tell everybody out there a little bit about the work you're doing in a practice called a human capital practice, which I love that term, and AchieveNEXT. So fill us in.
Well, AchieveNEXT is an organization that we formed that helps people develop, whether it be through executive coaching, leadership development. I know you're an extremely strong executive coach, and that's something I like to talk to you about after this podcast. And then one of our main practices is the one that I formed called business relationship training, based on how to help individuals and corporations, teams launch, advance, and sustain their most important business relationships. When I was a VP of sales, we would just say, hey, go follow Charlie. He's really good with people. And, 40 people would be trying to follow Charlie. No one actually ever created a process, put metrics, and really focused on the dark art of how people work together. And for the last 18 years, I think, if you ask me, our greatest accomplishment, we helped organizations realize relationship development is a competency, regardless of your DISC score, regardless of your Myers-Briggs score, regardless of your personality style. We do an awful lot of training with engineers. We do an awful lot of training with IT people, and we do your traditional salespeople. So if you have a process, people can learn anything.
I think you bring up a good point because, and here we go, sidetrack number one, everyone. Get ready. This is going to be really fun. So fun fact, I don't know if Ed even knows, I am a former engineer. Wow. However, I don't have the it was not my forever work. But because of that, a lot of the work I also do is with engineers, technical people, let's say who we would classically consider introverts who are not naturally strong at building relationships. But I think you bring up the good point that this is a competency you can learn and build. It doesn't necessarily have to be innate for you to be able to flex the muscle.
Exactly. We create a process called the relationship ladder. 5 easy steps to take you from an acquaintance to a peer to an advisor with another person. And when process-centric people see that, I can learn this stuff. And of course, the great, personality type individuals are like, he's just validating what I'm so good at. And there's a linchpin to everything we do. And I think you'll love this. I know your audience will love this concept, Angie. It's called relational GPS. I hear all the time, there's so many things to learn about people. And how do I build a relationship? Well, number one, you want to be curious, and that's one of your superpowers. And once you're curious, you're going to learn about people's business and personal goals, their causes or passions, things they care deeply about, and or their struggles. Every human being has that code in their DNA. And then all of a sudden, when you're hearing things like, oh, that was a goal, I'm going to explore Angie's goal. Or, Angie's struggling with that. I'm going to ask some questions and be a little careful how I ask those questions. And then the next time I talk to Angie, and we've had so many customers build this into their CRM systems, these three simple letters, goals, our GPS, goals, passions, and struggles, the roadmap to relational success. So there's a little easy takeaway for everybody before I say anything else.
I love it. So the idea here is that one foundational element you can bring to a relationship is understanding goals, passions, and struggles. I mean, even just from a sales 101, and anybody out there who's done entrepreneurship coaching with me is like, oh no, here she goes. Solutions that solve problems, the pain point thing, right? So if you can understand what somebody wants and have sympathy or even empathy for the struggles getting them there, all of a sudden there's a common ground there that is kind of creates an instant and authentic connection, right?
Yes, exactly. In fact, I know you have a lot of entrepreneurs in your audience, and I believe an entrepreneur is nothing more than a solution looking for problems. But to find those problems, you have to build relationships. So it's kind of a circular thing. You've got all these skills. Maybe you had a technical background and now you want to take it out and create your own practice or business or something like that. Ultimately, you got to go meet people. I always like to say, and I know when I started my company 18 years ago, I had to have at least 100 meetings. Now that sounds daunting. It's 2 a week, right? It's not that daunting. And if you want to do it in half a year, it's 4 a week. Well, you could do 1 meeting a day talking to people about your business and learning things. So, I always thought I'd write a book on that, and I never got to that. But I think that, and by the way, this is my normal voice. So if I sound raspy, this is how I talk. I speak all the time, and I never get my normal voice back. So hope you don't mind. But you got to have 100 meetings. So if you're an entrepreneur, plan on having 100 meetings before you actually start seeing some progress. I know that sounds daunting, but it really isn't.
Well, and it goes back to the idea that I love that idea that, like, as an entrepreneur, I am a solution. I have a solution, or I should, right? Because the last thing you want to do is try to create the problem for which you have a solution. Kind of people already need to have them. However, you can't be that solution if you're not out there talking to the people and building relationships with the people who have the problem that you can solve for them.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. When I started, LinkedIn was not where it is today. And I don't believe LinkedIn is really about selling. It's about creating a profile for yourself. And the more you contribute, I think the more your profile increases. And then people start sharing. And next thing you know, people start reaching out to you on LinkedIn like, hey, can you help my company? Or do you do this? Or do you know somebody who does that? So I think, LinkedIn can be looked at a lot of different ways, but it's the number one business network. And I'm a convert. I'm a baby boomer. Until 5 years ago, I'm a keynote speaker, speak all over the world. I had the worst LinkedIn profile you'd ever want to see. And then I had a salesperson who was part of our company say, you got to up your LinkedIn game, man. And he taught me how to do it. And now I love LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. We've built a network of sales leaders and entrepreneurs on our LinkedIn, and you'd be surprised at who weighs in when we post something. So if you're an entrepreneur, and I know that's not necessarily part of our discussion today, but you create those ethereal relationships. They're really important.
I'm like vibrating over here because you just gave me like a giant. I mean, this is like the biggest, shiniest carrot you could give me, because I am a huge proponent of LinkedIn. It is how I started my business. I got a real true story. I got my first client because I commented on somebody else's post. Right. And so you have the ability, and I think that this is, even if this isn't the core of our conversation, LinkedIn is a really leverageable, critical tool to building business relationships, right? So it enables the bigger conversation that we're having here. And it's very relevant whether you are an entrepreneur who wants to go find the problem of which you are the solution, or if you're a job seeker or in a more professional development capacity of wanting to create potential for yourself in the future. There's a lot of proactivity that LinkedIn can allow you to have to build relationships before you need them, which brings me to something I want to ask you, Ed. I really have to psych people up to get into the LinkedIn networking game because they feel inauthentic. It feels disingenuous. It feels like, well, I'm just asking for help. It's self-serving. How, as a fellow fan of this platform as an enablement tool to building relationships, can someone do this authentically so that it feels good and natural and does help this idea of building intentional relationships?
Well, I think, first of all, being authentic on LinkedIn is really important. So we have a little series we call A Minute to Win It, Sales Minute to Win It. And every 2-3 weeks, I'm sitting in this room. You might see a worker with a weed whacker go by, and we have a very informal 60 seconds that we'll post. And I think people on LinkedIn appreciate authenticity. 82% of millennial decision makers, and they're the number one group of decision makers in the business world today, check you out on LinkedIn before they will engage with you. I mean, that's a scary number. That the first place they go, you go, because I'm presuming that's around where you are, maybe a little younger. A millennial goes to LinkedIn. So get a great picture out there, put a good background on there. I noticed in your LinkedIn, you talk about how you contribute, not your job. So underneath your picture, that's how you contribute to the world. That's how you make a difference. Your about is really your job or your business or those kind of things. So keep that in mind. And you mentioned it right off the bat. You commented on a post. That's the simplest way. And that comment does say, hey, by the way, I train all these clients and I know this. No, you make a comment on the post that provides some sense of credibility to you. Maybe I just cited some data. That always makes you credible. Or if you know Angie and you know her posts are strong, maybe say something about Angie's posts. They continue to be strong. And here's something I'd add to that. We don't have to create. I'm in the content business, but most of us don't have to create our own content. There's so much great stuff. There's stuff that comes in your spam that if you looked at it, maybe it's some survey they're trying to sell you and they give you a little data element. There's stuff out there. You can cite it and you can just post on LinkedIn.
Yep. I'm going to add to that. I'm going to make a funny comment and then I'm going to make sure we don't end up down the whole LinkedIn rabbit hole because I very well could and it would be interesting. But right now, engaging with other people's content is the best way to build visibility on LinkedIn with how the algorithm is working. So for those of you that want to get a little bit more active on there, but the idea of creating your own content feels daunting or vulnerable or both, just go comment on stuff and just be your own voice. That's the big thing. And it's funny because the generational thing, I consider myself a Gen Xer with some millennial tendencies because I was born in 1980. I have a sister who's 8 years older than me, and I grew up in the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania where we were slow to adopt technology. However, my little sister-in-law has a new boyfriend, and as soon as I found out his last name, the first thing I did was go look him on LinkedIn, look him up on LinkedIn. So I just proved your point, Ed.
Yep, that's right. And you're a cusper. You're like a cusper.
I'm a cusper.
Yeah, you're a cusper.
Yep, exactly. So. Well, and I think that this all brings us to something I did want to talk to you a little bit about, which is, LinkedIn has become such a critical part of this overall business relationships ecosystem. And I'm curious for you over your time in the corporate world, what else have you seen change there? Because I feel like we are starting to build, I would say, more systemic awareness around this kind of like intentionality, authenticity, relationships, the human capital piece. And I would love for you to kind of give us an idea of where you feel like we're at now compared to, the last 30 or so years of corporate America and culture.
Well, I think if you go way back, even before past 30 years, everyone was a human brand. Our faces were our brand, right? Everything was in person. And then over time, we started adding technology. And I when I wrote the Relationship Engine in, I don't know, it's 2016 or 17, I didn't want to write that book. I had written 3 previous books. And I thought I had plenty of books to run our business and to do well and to serve, business kind, right? And then the publisher, HarperCollins, approached me about writing a book for leadership that was, because a lot of our focus was on sales. And I didn't want to write a book because it's about 1,000 hours of time. And, it's a lot of sleepless nights, and I have a wonderful marriage. And sometimes it gets in the way because you're writing a book when you should be sleeping, and your laptop gets closed while you're sleeping. So I asked the publisher, what's my book about? And they said, thoughtfulness in business. And that got my attention because right around, we were so digital. Everything was digital. We're going to sell everything digitally. Everything's going to be purchased on the internet. We don't need human beings anymore. And here's a publisher, and they know how to sell books. They're saying, no. We see it swinging back to a little more normalcy. So I think that, and then the pandemic happened. And now we are swamped with in-person requests because everybody so I think regardless of your generation, I think human beings do like to socialize where you can actually shake hands or punch fists or whatever we do, what everybody's comfortable with. So I think the swing back to in person and high touch. And if you're an entrepreneur, it's a high contact sport. I want to make sure that's clear. This is not, I'm going to sell by the way, if you're an entrepreneur and it's not a product, you're selling the invisible. Mm-hmm. And the invisible is an idea. How in the world do you sell, how does Angie start her business? I'm asking this rhetorically, and become a great executive coach and help with career resume writing and all the great things you do in your own business. Well, somewhere along the line, you were, please don't take this the wrong way, a nobody in that space. I was a nobody in sales training and learning and development. So somewhere along the line, we had to take a chance. We had to put ourselves out there, and we had to go meet people. And every once in a while, we get lucky, and some customer, some company says, you know what, this is different. I haven't seen anything like this before. I'm going to give this person a chance. And then you deliver, you don't. And most entrepreneurs usually can deliver because they're pretty highly skilled. But you are selling invisible stuff. You're selling ideas. And it all comes down to the like, know, and trust you can build with that person. And it starts with like. How do they like you? What are you going to look like in front of their team or working with them? How do they feel? Are they smiling when they're with you? Or they're like, oh, geez, I got another call with Ed today. There's a lot to that. And I don't think it's necessarily all psychological. I think it's behavioral. I think the way we behave, the way they perceive us, it starts with a concept that we call worthy intent. Should I pivot into that, Angie? I didn't think I was going to.
I was actually just writing it down to make sure that we went more into it. So let's just go more into it. Tell me more.
Well, every entrepreneur has to start to what they did. And I was a VP of sales for a technology company for many years, had a great career. I mean, I was on a great path, could have stayed there another 20 years and then retired. And on a Friday in August in 2006, my youngest son, Grant, fell off a skateboard, had to be medevaced to Children's Hospital here in Philadelphia with my wife. And I had to get to the hospital with our older son, Brett, that on a busy Friday afternoon. And when Brett and now Laurie and Grant, they got there in 4 minutes. It was going to take us almost an hour in Friday afternoon traffic. So when we finally get to Children's Hospital, they call it CHOP, C-H-O-P for short. We're coming down through elevators and navigating, and because we used a different health system at the time. And when we got to the bottom of the escalator, a woman approached us wearing a business suit with a lanyard on, and she looked at a chart, and she said, "Are you the Wallaces?" Now you can imagine how I felt that, oh my gosh, they had to send something really bad happened. And turned out, she introduced herself. She said, "I just want to let you know, Grant is stable. We think he's got a very bad concussion. And I'm going to take you to where we take our helicopter kids." And as I'm smiling now, that warm gesture, that reassurance, like, hey, we have helicopter kids all the time here. You're going to be okay. That flipped everything around for me. Grant had a severe concussion. He played college baseball. He works in the business with me today. But that was the pivotal moment where I went from corporate guy to entrepreneur. I always wanted to form a company and help people. And one thing I was really good at was relationships. And I knew there wasn't a lot on that. It was like a little niche. So the first phrase they came up with was worthy intent. That health system did not have to do that. They did not have to put us first. We would have found Grant and Laurie somewhere. But they sent a representative to help us with that. I call that an ambassador of first impressions, right? They sent that ambassador to us. But Angie, a monk has good intentions, right? A monk is off somewhere, praying, thinking great thoughts, sending energy into the universe. They have no clue that their good intentions are being successful. Business people, entrepreneurs, they know.
We get to see it.
We get to see it, hear it. So how would the health system have gauged our good intention, their good intentions playing back to us? Well, number one, Laurie switched both kids to that health system. And she was a nurse, and whenever parents asked for her advice, she recommended their doctors. We donate to their big fundraiser every year. I tell this story in keynotes and continue to promote the CHOP brand and how well I think it's in the first chapter in the book you reference. I think I've got it in there somewhere. My point is, we can observe behaviors that display our worthy intentions. That's what a monk can't get. But we know whether people are giving us extra meeting time, whether they're showing up on time for the meetings we set, they're asking us questions about our business, they're offering to help us. We can observe all those behaviors. And that's the foundational principle that we think all relationships are built on, that if we don't enter interactions with good intentions, those are greens fees. They get us on the golf course. They get us in the theater. But it's all about the response we get that tells us, hey, this is really working out. I would highly recommend for your audience, if they're thinking about becoming entrepreneurs, don't wait for your son to fall off a skateboard, okay? Take Angie's advice and start thinking about it proactively. You don't need a traumatic event that changes your life and throws you into that kind of a flutter. Think about it, plan it, and I like the term you like to use, Angie, is intentional. Be intentional about it. So thank you for letting me share that story.
Well, and I love that you brought it back to that idea of there's a way to embrace some of these things without waiting for the precipitating event to come. And a lot of times I'll ask people, like, what was the catalyst that finally got you to move from employment into entrepreneurship? And what's really interesting, and Ed and I were actually talking about this before we started recording, so there's a little like behind the scenes info, is there's two common themes I see here. One is that many people have the wake up call when it came to making a big change. However, Ed and I both agree that you can actually proactively put yourself through a process there or begin considering some of those things without waiting for that external force to apply to you, which means you can probably do it with a little bit more control and intentionality. And the second thing we see here, which was also in your story, and what I would like to dive into a little bit more, is the idea of intentionality. We have found very much that people who are satisfied in their work and, don't disdain Mondays anymore have been intentional, whether it's finding goals alignment in an employer or whether it is figuring out that purpose and going to serve. And I love this idea that if you can become intentional and masterful in relationships and pair that with that intentionality, you have so much to gain from it. What do we have to gain? What is the reason somebody should go and take a step towards doing this?
Well, just to comment on one of your points, work can be a 4-letter word for some people. And I've been fortunate that whenever I've been in a situation where work was a 4-letter word, I'm a recovering accountant. And it was a 4-letter word because nothing wrong. I have lots of friends who are CPAs, but it just wasn't in my personality. And rather than, what are the 3 things you can do when you have a situation that you don't really want to be involved with? You can accept it and continue to suffer, right? You're a coach, you know this. You can seek to change it, or you can leave, right?
But it's a choice.
But
no matter which one you choose, flight, fight, or freeze, it's a choice.
Yeah, I like those terms better. You have a choice. You have a choice to wake up. You have a choice to wake up, put your feet on the bedroom floor, and not hit snooze. Right? You have that choice every day. You have a choice to eat healthy, or all the different things. You have a choice to be happy. Everybody, like I was given a keynote once, Angie, and I signed books after the keynotes, and during the one book signing, this very nice person, she said to me, "I can't believe you have problems." And I said, "What do you mean?" And she says, "Well, people in your business, you don't have it." Like, she was sincere, because I told her our older son is autistic. I had a sister who was very ill at the time. Some of these things come out when you're doing a keynote, just off the top of your head, you'll tell a story. And she said, "I never thought people like you had problems." I said, "Believe me, you didn't hear the half of my problems."
Because just because you own your own business doesn't mean there aren't some 4-letter word days. However, I think the foundational piece is and making sure that the good days far outweigh the bad. And that's when you start to get out of whack there, or when, 3 out of 4 Sundays a month, you're reading my Sunday Scaries newsletter going, "Oh my gosh, I needed this so bad." You might want to do something bigger than just read my newsletter, even though my newsletter's awesome.
I'm sure it's great.
Nothing's perfect. But it's about finding the situation that's perfect enough for you, your personality, your goals, and your own struggles, the GPS.
Yeah, I have a very simple metric for entrepreneurs, or even when I work with, we're training salespeople. At the end of every week, or when you're comfortable, you should have a meeting with yourself. And I suggest you calendar it, because if you don't, it won't happen. So at the beginning of every year, set aside 4 to 4:30 on Fridays, a half an hour, whatever you want. And it's sacred unless it's something with your family that comes up. And during that time, it's a reflection time for your business. And this is a real kind of moment of truth idea. Ask yourself, did I advance my business this week? Really simple question. Really hard to answer. Do I feel like this week I'm further along than I was last Friday? And if you have about 5 or 6 weeks in a row, then, but it is pretty easy to see, well, I thought I had a tough week, but I had that meeting on Monday, and that meeting on Tuesday led to this proposal. And you know what? I can actually forecast some revenue in a month or two. Those are what we call advances. Are you advancing, or are you stagnant, or are you falling backwards? And being intellectually honest with yourself is not that easy. But if you have to pay the mortgage, or you've got children that you're trying to put through college, whatever it is, it gets kind of daunting. So you can kind of cut right through it and say, you know what, I think I might need to pivot this, or you know what, I'm still charging forward. I'm doing great here.
Well, and I love that you kind of just started giving some, let's say, some tools, resources. I love to give people practical advice here, because my first goal is let's inspire people, right? Look at these conversations, look at these people who have taken risks or used adversity to progress themselves forward. They're sitting down on Friday afternoons and they like what they've done that week, right? Whether you're in a job or whether you own a business. And so I would love to give everybody else a little bit more practical advice, maybe on that relationship side of let's say somebody's out there, they're listening, they're like, yeah, I could really be better about this relationship thing, whether it's up the ladder, down my ladder with my clients, I can be more intentional about it. So what are some small steps we can implement to do that?
Well, one idea is around creating a plan for relationships. So it sounds kind of, I don't know, manipulative, but we have plans for most things in life. We have plans and processes. Even when we get up in the morning, we have a process. You work out, you do this, you eat this cereal, you do that, you drive, we have a process. We get a mortgage, we have a process. We get financing for our kids for college, we have a process. There's a process for everything. Chick-fil-A has a process, right? And they're very successful with it. So why not a process for the key relationships connected to our goals? And the research that we've uncovered over time is 89% of business people say relationships are the most important thing. They're only getting 45% of the potential from their relationships. It gets worse. Only 24% of people think about relationships with intention. And only 5% actually create a plan to activate that intention. And a plan is so simple, Angie. Think about your goals, whatever your goal, write your goals down, right? Goals are just dreams until you write them down. That's a cliche, but it's true. The tactile aspect of writing is so much stronger, and I know I'm a baby boomer, than typing or reading. Write them down. And now start mapping a human being to help you accomplish that goal. Like a real belly button, not a company name, not a department, but a belly button. And so let's say, I'm trying to add executive coaching talent to our company here. And my goal next year is to have an alpha executive coach join our team. I know Angie. I'm going to write Angie's name down there. Okay. Real simple. Map a goal to a person. Easy, but less than 5% of people do it. Now, what kind of relationship do I have with Angie? That's the second step. Well, we're a little bit beyond acquaintances, but we're not advisors. So we're kind of peers great, we're peers. Write it down. What do I know about Angie's GPS? And it's shocking for people. I'll ask audiences who've had customers and colleagues, and they don't know their goals or they don't know their passions. Locate GPS. And then the last step is write a strategy, a real simple strategy that starts with a verb. Meet, engage, introduce, deliver, something to advance that, to launch, advance, or sustain that relationship with Angie. So in action, we call them action planning. We call it action planning. And what's shocking, I could be working with a bunch of boomers. They love this idea. I could be working with a bunch of brand new Gen Xers or Gen Zs. They love this idea because, it's breaking down this big thing into, and we've actually created an assessment that asks you to do 5 people. And if you can apply this approach to 5 people, you can apply it to 55 or 555 or 5,055. So identify a goal, attach a human to it. Where do you stand relationally? What do you know about him GPS? What's your strategy? Strategies are 1 sentence, maybe 2.
Did we just get a sneak peek into the relationship ladder?
Yes. Well, yes. The ladder starts with you're an acquaintance to a peer to an advisor. And depending on what your goal is, you don't have to be an advisor.
Yeah, not everyone will be step 5 on the ladder.
That's right.
In your world.
That's right. We suggest that if you can be in the middle where you're a strong peer, that's 80% of your business is going to, and your whatever you're trying to accomplish is going to come from those people. The top of the ladder are people my son Grant, he works in the business now, as I mentioned, the helicopter kid, right? Dad, how many people do you have at the top of your ladder? He actually talks like that. I said, well, son, no one ever asked me that. Well, you train these thousands of people. So I'll get back to you. So I actually, one Saturday, nobody was around, which was rare. And I started, and I only wrote 14 names down. So in all the years of this business, 14 people are where I'm advising them and they're advising me. And I've trained, like I mentioned, thousands and thousands of people. There's 14 to make it to the top. So we don't need to get to the top. We don't have time. Let's get most of the relationships to the middle where we're behaving as peers, 2 human beings helping each other, whether they be customer, supplier, whether they be entrepreneur, client, whatever that might be.
So there's a couple ideas there I want to highlight. One is that the further up the ladder you go, the more intimate the relationships get. So it's natural that there will be fewer of them. Otherwise, that ladder is going to be a little top heavy and it's going to fall over.
Right, exactly.
But the bigger thing, and you reinforced it a little bit just a second ago, is this idea that just as much as you want to make a plan on who you want to build relationships with, also make a plan on how you can be that person. Mm-hmm. Because I think that that's one of the things, if we talk about how to be authentic in networking or how to be authentic on LinkedIn or whatever it is, it's having a truly natural curiosity and willingness to get to know somebody else, either before or in addition to helping them get to know you. It's less self-serving that way. That's when you truly get to that really fruitful middle of the ladder true peer mm-hmm. relationship.
So my 4 ideas for active listening, which you have to do, which you're referring to, come prepared with a really good question. So I'm meeting you for the first time. I'm some kind of consultant. I don't know whether I'm going to be good at this or not. I've done some background on you, Angie, because there's lots of information about all this right now. And I come prepared to ask you a question you haven't been asked before, like this one. Okay. I hope everybody likes this one. Angie, tell me something about your business that I can't find in a Google search. You like that one?
Yeah. I'm sitting here trying to answer it in my head. But the point is, while I try to figure out what the answer to that might be, now I'm curious in my own head, right? I'm like, oh, what is there? Right. And it's almost that idea of like reverse engineering. So when you talk about the plan, start with, why do I intentionally, that's a word that's been in this conversation quite a lot, want to bring this person onto my ladder? At what level do I ultimately want them to be on the ladder? And what steps should I take to get there? It's that idea of the plan or having, it's like a goal within a goal. It's your own GPS.
That's right.
Of knowing what goal they're going to help you achieve, maybe what problem they're even going to help solve for you, but also just reciprocating that at the same time and being informed and curious at the beginning. I tell exactly what I tell people, even just for like informational interviews. If you're job searching or want to learn about new careers or something like that, go in and care for five minutes. Yeah,
seriously. And you asked that question, or here's the other one I like to ask is, what's your competition doing that you'd like to be able to do? That's a little different. That's not an entrepreneur type question, but if you've got some kind of business services, you can ask that business owner that question. So they have been asked those questions generally. The other question I love is, how's the business environment impacting your business? Another easy question you can ask anybody at any time, because it's a dynamic business environment. It's a generic question, but it doesn't sound that way. They're going to interpret it based on that business environment at that moment. And then the 3 baby questions after they answer that are, why? Can you tell me more? Is there anything else? Everybody's like, how do I actively listen? Just listen. Ask a question, ask 3 baby questions. You're going to learn so much, and you're going to jot down GPS. And the other thing that's going to come across is you're interested in them. You're trying to learn about them, and not just, hey, I want to pitch you on this. I want to pitch you on relationship training today. So anyway, that I couldn't help when you took me down that road to comment on that.
You don't go to a first date with a ring in your pocket is basically if we could just come up with a very simple anecdote. You take the time to get to know each other before you pop the big question.
That's right.
And these are great methodologies to do that. One of the book that changed my approach to coaching was Michael Bungay Stainer's The Coaching Habit. And it is very much rooted in the tell me more. And you just keep asking what else until there is nothing else, because so few people actively listen to us and hear what we're saying that as soon as you give someone space to do that, it's magic, right? That to me is the foundation and the starting point of the relationship, because the like is there because you show you're willing to hear them. The trust is there because of the same. And now you know each other because you shared these things that a lot of people don't give space for. So be curious. And the baby questions is an excellent piece of advice to start the next time you go into a new business engagement.
Absolutely.
And now that we got everybody hooked on this concept, where do they find the book where they can learn even more?
Well, there's two books I'd ask them to consider. One is the Business Relationships That Last. I think that book is probably better for an entrepreneur starting a business because it's about how to launch new relationships, how to get referrals, how do you work your way up the ladder. If you're established in your career and you're not moving into an entrepreneurial thing and you want to move through the corporate, and I know you probably coach people on both sides, the Relationship Engine, the book that you cited initially, they're all out on Amazon. They've spent their time in the bookstores and everything's electronic now. I believe there's an Audible version of Relationship Engine. I think we have one coming on Business Relationships That Last. It's not my voice because you won't want this voice.
I disagree
you wouldn't want this
but...
voice telling those stories. But there's great anecdotes in both books about real relational leaders, and that's the term we use. So, but thanks for letting me pitch that. I appreciate it. And
and we of course will. We'll put all of those on the show notes at nomoremondays.info. So it'll be an easy link to those. And they may or may not already be in my Amazon cart.
Thank you. And then Ed Wallace 007 on LinkedIn. That's the best way to reach me. And we post a lot of great stuff. So hopefully people will connect with me.
And he's now part of my network there. So you should follow both of us and we will fill up your news feeds. This has been a fantastic conversation. I appreciate you for taking some time and sharing your wisdom and everything with us. And as we wrap it up and say goodbye to everybody, let's leave them with one more little piece of inspiration. What is your number one piece of advice on what everyone out there can do to get one step closer to career and life satisfaction?
I wouldn't read the newspapers or the online. I wouldn't look at macro stuff, because that's not going to impact you at the micro level. I would ignore all of the signs that try to scare us all from going into starting our own business. I started my business in 2008 happened. And if I read, back then we had newspapers. If I read newspapers, I wouldn't be here with you today. So, have that trust in yourself. And again, you can always say, I gave it a shot. It doesn't mean we're all going to be successful. So I would ignore the macro, focus on the micro, and believe in yourself.
I always love when somebody validates that. It gives me permission to just quiet the noise. And I will just reinforce that with, you can always find a reason not to. However, you won't be able to undo the regret if you don't try. And if you really look at the worst case scenario that could happen if you do, it tends to not be that bad. We just make it this giant, scary thing in our heads. And if you can just come down to earth and look at it practically, imagine what could happen instead of what could happen. Right, Ed?
Absolutely.
Woohoo!
Very well said.
I love this so much. Thank you again, Ed, for joining us on this episode and for being part of the No More Mondays movement. We love these kinds of conversations and hearing from people who have navigated their own career crossroads, but even more importantly, are helping others on this path to success and fulfillment. So awesome advice here. I hope you will follow Ed, join both of us on LinkedIn and all the free stuff we give out. Grab the books. We'll link all of them in the show notes at nomoremondays.info. Give us a rating because this is one of, I think, my favorite episodes. No offense to the rest of you guests out there. And until next week, everybody, I hope you ditch the Sunday scaries and have a great week. I'll see you next Wednesday for another episode of No More Mondays podcast. Thanks for joining us for another episode of No More Mondays. Tune in next week as we bring you more insights and actions to help you improve your life and career. Don't forget, visit us online at nomoremondays.info to get all the details, show notes, and recommendation from this episode. No More Mondays. We drop new episodes every Wednesday. No More Mondays is brought to you by Career Benders, Inc. in partnership with executive producer Jane Durkee. For more information about career coaching, resume writing, personal branding, recruiting, and entrepreneurship coaching services, visit us online at careerbenders.com.